Hello, I'm Howard Vicini, and this is my country. I'm happy to welcome back Kiilu Nyasha from the Committee for the Defense of Human Rights, a committee of people who have been working to promote the interests of the San Francisco 8. Welcome back, Kiilu.
Thank you very much, Howard, for having me.
This is your third visit.
Yes.
But I think to start with, you should give us a little overview of who the San Francisco 8 are for viewers who weren't with us the first few times.
Sure. Well, the San Francisco 8 are 8 elders. Most of them are former Panthers. All of them were community activists. And they have been arrested. 6 of them were taken from their homes and communities across the country, one from Florida, two from Los Angeles area, a couple from San Francisco, and 2 were already in prison. Herman Bell and Jalil Muntakim, also known as Anthony Bottom, have been in New York State prisons for 34 and 36 years, respectively, Herman being the 34 years. They were framed up for the murder of 2 New York police officers, and they are eligible for parole. They've also had this case, the case of the murder of a police officer on August 28th, 1971, in San Francisco's Ingleside police station. Now, I should name them. Richard Brown is from San Francisco. Richard Brown and Richard O'Neill, and I'm delighted to say that they have gotten out on bail. They were the first to get out on bail, August 30th and 31st, respectively. Then there's Harold Taylor, who is from Florida, and he's out on bail. There's Hank Jones, just got out on bail yesterday. He's 72 years old and lives in Altadena. And by the way, these prisoners, these brothers, all range in age from the youngest being Jalil is 55, and the eldest is Hank Jones at 72, and the others most of them are in their 60s. And
let's back up just a little bit and talk a little bit more about the charges been brought against them. And these charges, this isn't the first time they were charged with this, is it?
No, it isn't, and this is what I was trying to get to. The charges of murder were brought against Harold Taylor and John Bowman. John Bowman would have made this the case of the San Francisco 9. However, our wonderful, beautiful brother, I knew John Bowman. We were Panthers in New Haven together, and he was transferred from San Francisco to New Haven, and he died of cancer December 23rd of last year. However, it was John Bowman who really got the ball rolling in terms of the defense that was mounted in behalf of all 8, but the 6 brothers particularly who have been railroaded back to prison. And but I'm losing my place here. We were trying to deal with the charges, right? The question. The Attorney General is not only charging these brothers with the murder of the police officer, they're trying to charge them with a whole slew of bank robberies and all kinds of police killings and all kinds of things that happened and conspiracy. Richard O'Neill, for example, is only charged with conspiracy.
Let's put this in a time frame. The original charge was brought 30...
I was about to say that, between 1968 and 1973. However, Howard, it's very important for our listeners our viewers to understand clearly that period between 68 and 73, by that time, something like 37 Panthers had been murdered by police. Okay, and for example, another example, the New York case of the New York 21 Panthers, including Tupac's mama, Afeni Shakur, whom I knew, and was just a very dynamic activist. 21 Panthers taken off the streets for 2 whole years, and a judge read off 147 counts, if my memory serves me right, of not guilties in the final analysis. But they were just charged with all kinds of nonsense, conspiracy, and to blow up Macy's and the botanical gardens and all kinds of stuff. And they were all exonerated.
But the particular murder that we're talking about of the police officer in the Ingleside.
Right.
That charge at that time the case was dropped against these defendants.
Yes, I want to get to that. Harold Taylor, John Bowman, and Reuben Scott were tortured for close to a week, for days, in a New Orleans prison. And detectives McCoy and Erdelatz were there from San Francisco supervising their torture.
And why were they being held in New Orleans as opposed to San Francisco?
I think they had gone to New Orleans, and that's where they were
picked up.
And that's where they were picked up. But they also picked up something. I think at the time they picked up about 13 people, and
related to this case. Or on various charges?
I think it was related to this case in the first place. However, Harold Taylor still suffers serious injury behind the torture that he received, and I must let the viewers know that they can learn more about that by going to www.freethesf8, the number 8, freethesf8.org, and find a Legacy of Torture, a 28-minute video produced by Freedom Archives that tells that story very well. It simulates the torture that was done, and you hear directly from John Bowman. It was accomplished before he passed, and you hear the voices of Ray Boudreau and a number of the other, Richard Brown, and particularly Harold Taylor, who describes in detail the kind of torture that he what they were all subjected to. And now, the only evidence that they have no evidence.
But let's stick with the
Sure.
the issue of torture. This is not conjecture on the part of the movie producers or on your part. This is something that was established by the FBI, isn't that right?
Well, it was not only established and that this was actually done, but
that was the basis that the case was thrown out.
A judge threw it out in 1975. This case came before a San Francisco judge, and he ruled that statements made under torture, coerced statements, were inadmissible. Now, this same issue is going to come up next Monday at the next hearing for the 8th, and it will. The lawyers refer to that as collateral, a motion for collateral estoppel. In other words, that's legalese for a judge should respect the prior rulings of the court that disallowed the admission of coerced testimony in the trial of Harold Taylor for the so-called L.A. shootout. He was acquitted in that trial because the facts were, and the jury and a judge decided that what he said was true, that Ray Boudreau, John Bowman, and Harold Taylor were attacked and shot at and fired upon by a car full of police. Some of them were in plain clothes. They fired back in self-defense.
Yeah, I think we're getting too many facts going on here.
Okay.
I think we should stay on the case at hand because it'll be too confusing.
But this is relevant to this case.
It is relevant, but
because it has come up in the hearings.
Right. Now, a long time has passed, 30 years approximately.
36.
Yeah, has passed since the charges were dropped the first time. And during this time...
the charges were thrown out in 75.
All right.
Okay, but this case
So it's about 32 years since it's been thrown out.
Right.
What have these gentlemen been doing in the meantime?
Oh my goodness, they're incredible people. The Richard Brown, who is affectionately referred to as the mayor, knows everyone because he has been a mentor to youth in this city. He worked 20 years for Ella Hill Hutch Community Center. He raised 9 kids of his own, 5 more that weren't his own. I mean, he's just an incredible guy who has dedicated his whole life to serving people and taking care of the needs of, and especially mentoring juveniles and trying to keep them out of jail and out of juvenile and mentoring them and so on. Then you have Harold. Francisco Torres, a Puerto Rican brother from New York City. He's been living in Queens. He's a Vietnam veteran. He's been with Vietnam Vets Against the War. He's been a mentor to youth, working with troubled youth. He's very loved and respected in his community. He's also the caretaker of a severely disabled son who has sickle cell. And the judge even remarked in court that a video was submitted as an exhibit at one of the bail hearings by the attorney, and the judge had viewed it, and he said his son is 34 years old and he looks 14. He remarked, so he's obviously been well taken care of, and it's then you have Richard O'Neill, who received a commendation, who's worked for the city for 25 years.
That's the city and county of San Francisco.
San Francisco, right. And he received a commendation from the San Francisco Fire Department for rescuing 2 individuals from a burning building, or from a fire, in any case. And so many of these brothers are just amazing. And even the brothers behind the walls, like Herman Bell, initiated a Victory Gardens program while in a New York State prison, enlisting outside activists to start a gardening, fresh produce garden up in Maine and distribute the produce to urban areas in the cities. So they've been busy even behind bars. They've also gotten degrees. Herman Bell and Jalil have gotten both master's and bachelor's degrees, 2 degrees apiece.
So we've got 6 gentlemen who've been out, living in the communities, exemplary lives, raising children. And
absolutely. Ray Boudreau is an electrician, 25 years for the city of Los Angeles.
Several of them raising families, several of them are veterans.
Their grandfathers.
Right.
Ray Boudreau
and the 2 gentlemen, and the 2 who've been in prison on as a result of an unrelated case. When were they first picked up on this new charge?
They were arrested January 23rd of this year.
And they've been being held at the San Francisco County Jail.
Yes, and they were being held in very poor conditions. I mean, they were being held in what they call administrative segregation, ADSEG, and there are no contact visits. They have to come to court in orange jumpsuits and shackled, their legs shackled, their hands cuffed, and just treated like criminals. And these are not criminals.
Okay. So this brings us back to the point that we've gotten to before on previous shows. Mm-hmm. So, what has happened? What is the good news that we have?
The good news is that we think that Cisco, the only one who hasn't been bailed out yet, will be out in a matter of another day or so. And Hank Jones was just gotten out last night.
Now, bail had been offered before, but it was at such an exorbitant amount that...
Oh, yeah, so I'm sorry. The bail was originally $10 million. Then it was finally reduced it was reduced first to $5 million, and then it was reduced, I think only 2 had $5 million. They decided to even it out. So but all of them, all the 6 were given bails of $3 million. And the day of the court hearing, in which the judge reduced all the bails, there were almost 3 rows of police there, and one of them was the torturer, Erdelatz. And I understand he's now a federal agent also. And the judge obviously was not intimidated. So I was frankly shocked.
And what did he finally lower the bail
He lowered the bails from $3 million to as low as $200,000 for Richard O'Neill, and the highest bail was for Cisco, who was charged with the first count, and that was $660,000. Nobody got any higher than that, and I have to give credit to the San Francisco 8 committee. Some of them have been working so hard and done such an incredible job of raising the bails, the equity, and dealing with all the red tape and the forms and everything that has to be done to make sure that those packages are together. And then I should also add that at the last hearing, the judge wanted to make sure that Ray Boudreaux got out by the end of the day, so he stopped the proceedings and got the bail package taken care of so that he could meet that 3 p.m. There was a 3 p.m. deadline for certain forms to have been signed and delivered, and he made sure that that was met so that Ray did get out that last
this is
court date.
Judge
This
Moscone.
is Judge Philip Moscone, and I tell you, when I visited Harold Taylor immediately the weekend following that bail hearing, he asked me, "What did you think about the judge lowered it?" I said, "I was shocked." He said, "So was I," because and even Lynn Stewart weighed in, and she said that she's an incredible attorney, and she's been under fire herself, and she said that she has never witnessed a case where bail was granted individuals accused of killing a police officer. So this was almost unprecedented.
What seemed to impress the judge the most in the presentations? You observed all of the presentation by the 8 attorneys.
Oh, yes. Well, I think that, the judge himself cited some of the things. He cited the commendation that Richard O'Neill received. He cited the fact that Hank Jones was discharged, received an honorary discharge from the U.S. Marines. He noted that Richard Brown, during the bail hearing, it came out that Richard Brown has received awards, excuse me, from the California Senate, State Senate, and Legislature, and a Martin Luther King Jr. award for his work. These are very impressive guys. At one of the bail hearings, for example, Ray Boudreaux's friend was a librarian, came all the way up from L.A. to testify. Unfortunately, she didn't get the chance to do so and had to fly back that weekend, but that day. But she wanted to testify. She would have testified that Ray fixed all the lights in the library for free. I mean, donated his labor. They needed new lighting in the library, and not too many electricians donate their labor. I mean, these guys are really impressive guys.
Where does the case seem to be going in your estimation? Next Monday they're going to be dealing with this admissibility of evidence or statements garnered under torture. And that's very important because we certainly wouldn't want to see a precedent set whereby tortured confessions can be admitted. It wouldn't portend well for any defendants coming behind these guys, or anybody, facing charges. Does the judge seem to give any indication of his...
my best guess is that if you take into consideration the fact that the state took DNA evidence from all 8, they found no matches to anything. they tried to claim that there was a fingerprint of Francisco Torres on a lighter that was found at the scene of the crime, but that doesn't even match. None of the fingerprint evidence matches. The DNA doesn't match. They've lost the gun, the weapon. It's lost. It's the testimony that they have. They do have one witness, and of course that's Reuben Scott, who has perjured himself in 2 courtrooms already. Has delivered perjurious testimony, and he's changed his statement numerous times.
Yeah, he also was one of the people charged.
He's also recanted his original testimony and testified for Harold Taylor in the '76 trial, even though he had helped put Herman behind bars because the testimony was under. He was tortured in that case, and Reuben Scott had actually gone to the judge in the case that was originally the case of Herman Bell and Noah Washington was the case of the New York Three. Herman Bell and Jaleel Muntakim, Anthony Bottom was the case of the New York Three, but Noah Washington is deceased now. He died in prison after 29 years. So the Reuben Scott had gone to the judge in the original trial.
Reuben Scott was one of the people charged.
Tortured.
Right.
But he's turned state's witness.
Yes, that's why I want to be clear to the viewer.
And he has immunity.
Yes.
But when way back in the 70s, when he went to court, he got an appointment with the judge in his chambers to try to say to the judge, I was tortured, this testimony is not true, and the judge just put him out.
Well, we will be back to revisit this as developments come up. Thank you and good night.